he stole a loaf of bread. But no one knew he had saved 17 lives. If this story touched your heart, leave a like and subscribe to our channel to remember the silent heroes. Because sometimes, one click can echo through an entire life. Raymond Cole was 66 years old. The weight of the years he carried as a former soldier showed in every step he took. In the back streets of Brooklyn, he was like a ghost digging through rusty recycling bins, moving silently with his faded army green backpack slung over one shoulder. The straps were worn, the fabric long past its prime. Unlike other homeless men, Raymond never made noise or begged. He just lived quietly, trying not to be noticed. No one knew he had once served more than 20 years in the U.S. Army as a logistics sergeant. He'd been deployed 3 times, once badly injured while saving a convoy, and even earned a medal for it. But life has a way of forgetting its heroes. When his wife Margaret's cancer was misdiagnosed by a government hospital, everything inside Raymond collapsed. When she died, he didn't just lose his wife. He lost his identity, his future, his hope. One day, hands trembling, Raymond walked into a grocery store. He hadn't eaten in 3 days. He spotted a stale loaf of bread on the shelf. Quietly, he tucked it into his coat. But the owner, Mr. Alvarez, saw him through the store's mirrors. "Hey, stop right there," he shouted. "I'm calling the cops." Raymond didn't run. He stood still, the coat slightly open, the bread clearly visible. "I just needed the strength to get through one more day," he said, barely above a whisper. The police came quickly. One of them, a younger officer named Logan Wells, noticed the worn military dog tag around Raymond's neck. "Were you really in the service?" he asked. Raymond nodded. "I used to be somebody." During booking, the public defender flipped through Raymond's file, his eyes more tired than sympathetic. Raymond was told he'd be in court the next morning. The following day, Raymond was brought into Brooklyn Courthouse, still wearing the same clothes from the day before. No family, no friends, just random reporters, clerks, and lawyers busy with other cases. Case number 58 to 134. The State versus Raymond Cole. The clerk called out. No one even looked up. A young prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, the defendant has prior petty theft charges and no fixed address. We ask that he remain in custody." Judge Ethan Monroe, known for being tough and cold, flipped open the file like it was just another name on a list. At first, his face didn't change. Then, something caught his eye. A name. His hands began to shake. His lips went dry. He stared at the file, then at Raymond, then back again. Suddenly, he stood up. The courtroom froze. Judges didn't just stand up in the middle of routine hearings. The room fell silent. "This court is taking a 15-minute recess," he said, voice cracking. "The defendant will remain seated." Raymond lowered his head. He had no idea what had just happened. He stayed quiet, while the rest of the room buzzed with whispers. But silence was something Raymond had grown used to. A man forgotten by the world. And yet somehow, his name had just shaken the entire room. So who exactly was Raymond Cole? And why had his name just made a judge lose all control? Judge Ethan Monroe walked quickly through the back door of the courtroom, clutching the case file to his chest. His eyes were distant, lost in memories buried somewhere under a sky darkened by sandstorms and the echo of screaming voices. The moment he shut his office door, he dropped into his chair. His fingers shook as he opened a drawer he hadn't touched in years. Inside was an old photo. He pulled it out. His eyes landed immediately on one figure, a soldier in the back row, standing tall among a group of troops. Tin uniform, cracked hands, face covered in dust from a firefight. Hard to recognize, but Ethan knew that face. "Raymond Cole," he whispered. "That's you, isn't it?" The photo had been taken in front of a field hospital in Iraq. Back then, Ethan had been a young medic. His first mission. He remembered the fear in his chest, the heavy gear on his back, and the shaky hope in his eyes. But that day, the convoy was ambushed. Amid the chaos and screaming, a truck exploded in flames. While everyone else dove for cover, one man, Raymond, jumped toward the burning vehicle, dragging out the wounded one by one. He threw himself into the fire without hesitation. Ethan remembered it clearly because he was one of them. Bleeding and barely conscious, he'd been carried 2 miles under enemy fire. On Raymond's back. That day, Ethan had survived. Now, the memory weighed heavy again. He'd never learned the man's full name, just remembered someone yelling Cole. In the confusion, he'd searched after the war, but found nothing. He had gone to law school, become a judge, but something always felt missing. And now that missing piece was sitting in his courtroom wearing a tattered coat, looking forgotten by the world. With shaking hands, Ethan opened his laptop. He still had access to certain records, especially from Veterans Affairs. He typed in Raymond Cole. The system responded. The file opened and in bold letters, it read, Staff Sergeant Raymond Cole Tours, Iraq, 2, Afghanistan, 1, Bronze Star, Fallujah, 2003 Humanitarian Mission. New York Times cover photo. Ethan froze. That photo on the screen, it was the same one. Raymond, carrying a child in his arms, smoke swirling around his face. Even through the chaos, his calm expression stood out. That look, this man had once been hailed as a hero in the press. And then, like so many, he'd been forgotten. The news cycle moved on. His name had faded into dust. At the bottom of the file, one more line. July 2003, Operation Chaos. Wounded medic, PFC Ethan Monroe, carried to safety by SSGT Cole. Ethan closed his eyes. Only one word escaped his lips. He saved my life. He stood up suddenly, grabbed his phone, and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Colonel Thomas Reed. Thomas, it's Ethan Monroe. I found him. Raymond Cole. He's in my courtroom. They're charging him with theft. But this man, he's the one who saved me. There was silence on the other end. Then only one sentence. I'm 3 hours away. Don't let him go. Ethan hung up. The decision was made. He wasn't just a judge anymore. Not today. Today, he was a man who owed a debt. He picked up the court paperwork and scribbled something on the back of it. This man is not just anyone. He is loyalty, forgotten by the world, standing here in flesh and blood. He attached the note beneath the old photo and left it on the clerk's desk, hoping someone would notice. This wasn't just about a stolen loaf of bread. This was about a country facing its own conscience. By the time court was about to resume, Raymond was still sitting alone. Anyone else might have been taken out, but no one had touched him. Even the bailiff was glued to his phone, ignoring the old man. Raymond sat with his head down, fingers lightly brushing the worn dog tag around his neck. Margaret's photo was still tucked inside his coat. His eyes carried that numb, familiar look. He'd never hurt anyone, but no one had remembered him either. Not until today, when that judge looked at him and then looked away. Did he recognize me? Raymond wondered. But deep down, he thought everything was already over. At exactly 11:15, the courtroom started to fill again. But this time, something had changed. People whispered. A few leaned over the clerk's desk. Someone pointed to the photo and the note taped below it. It read, "Some heroes never ask to be remembered, but we can never forget them." And just like that, the curtain began to rise. When Raymond was brought back into the courtroom, he wasn't expecting what he saw. The gallery that had been almost empty yesterday was now packed. Faces, eyes, none familiar. But what caught his attention first was the man sitting at the defense table, his seat. The young, exhausted public defender from before was gone. In his place sat a man in a gray suit, white hair neatly combed, and eyes that held both confidence and quiet sincerity. "Mr. Cole," the man said, standing and reaching out a hand. "I'm David Whitman. I'm with the Veterans Legal Defense Coalition. Someone asked that we give your case special attention." Raymond hesitated, but shook his hand cautiously. "I'm a criminal," he said under his breath. David gave a small, knowing smile. "Someone they call a criminal today might be the backbone of a nation tomorrow. I think we're about to learn that from you." Then the courtroom doors opened again, and everyone stood. Judge Ethan Monroe entered, but behind him walked 3 men in full military uniform. The room fell silent. They wore ribbons on their chests and medals on their collars, but one of them stood out. He moved slowly, with a kind of dignified weight. Raymond's eyes widened. He hadn't seen that face in 20 years, but he hadn't forgotten that stance. Colonel Thomas Reed. The colonel stepped up to the witness stand. The clerk stood to read the oath. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" Reed nodded. "I do, but I'm not just here to tell the truth. I'm here to speak a debt one long forgotten." You could hear a pin drop. In 2003, near Fallujah, our convoy was attacked. Enemy fire rained down. A fuel truck exploded. Everyone scattered. Everyone except one man. The man sitting there, Staff Sergeant Raymond Cole, ran straight into the flames. He didn't hesitate. He went in to save us. Soft gasps rippled through the courtroom. A few people pulled out tissues. 16 of my men are alive today because of him. And it didn't end there. During that same ambush, a young medic was badly injured unconscious. And even though Cole had shrapnel in his leg, he picked him up and carried him 2 miles through enemy fire. All eyes turned at once to the judge. Judge Ethan Monroe took off his glasses and lowered his head. His eyes were glassy. Then he finally spoke. "Mr. Cole," he said softly, "that medic was me. You carried me." Raymond's lip trembled. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he slowly nodded. "There was so much blood," he whispered. "I thought we'd lose you. And yet I lived," Ethan said. "But you vanished. I searched for years. Through files, records never even had your full name. I just remembered yelling Cole into the smoke." This was no longer a courtroom, it was a reckoning. And then Colonel Reed pulled out a folder. "Your Honor," he said, opening it. "According to our investigation, Mr. Cole's veteran pension and healthcare benefits were wrongfully terminated in 2008 due to a missed address update. Since then, approximately $246,000 in payments and full medical coverage have been denied to him." The courtroom buzzed. Journalists scrambled for their pens. The truth was no longer hidden. David Whitman stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Cole has lived for years without the rights he earned. He should have been living with dignity, not digging through trash cans, not sleeping on sidewalks. He is not a criminal. He's a forgotten hero." The young prosecutor removed his glasses. His voice had softened. "Your Honor, the state failed Mr. Cole. In light of this, the prosecution moves to dismiss all charges." Ethan nodded. "Motion granted. Mr. Raymond Cole, you are free to go. And this court, this nation, owes you an apology for one of its greatest failures." Raymond stood up, unsure what to say. He simply bowed his head. And then another door opened at the back of the courtroom. A young woman ran inside, eyes scanning the room. When she spotted Raymond, she broke into tears. Slowly, she walked toward him. "Uncle Ray, it's me, Emily, Margaret's niece. We've been looking for you for years." Raymond's eyes filled with tears. His shoulders dropped. And for the first time in over a decade, someone embraced him. And he realized, a hug isn't just skin against skin. It reminds you, you're still human. That afternoon, the front steps of the courthouse had turned into a media circus. Cameras, microphones, flashes everywhere. The man once overlooked on street corners was now the face everyone wanted to see. Raymond Cole stood clean-shaven, dressed in a navy suit that fit just right. His tie hung slightly loose, but the medals on his chest shimmered under the light like stars. Beside him stood Colonel Thomas Reed, and no longer just a judge, but now a friend who had stepped off the bench, Ethan Monroe. As reporters rushed in, Raymond instinctively took a step back. His eyes searched, and then found her Emily, his niece. She took his hand and whispered, "You don't have to speak. Your silence already does." But for the first time, Raymond decided to break that silence. He stepped forward on the courthouse stairs. The crowd instantly quieted. "I'm not here for sympathy," he began. His voice was deep, a little cracked, but carried the weight of the years he'd lived. "I'm not just a soldier. I'm a husband, an uncle, a friend, a citizen. And for 15 years, I was a ghost." His eyes scanned the crowd. "On the battlefield, bullets aren't what kill you. Silence does. And back home, it's being invisible. I lived for years, but I was never really seen. Not until someone looked at me, not with pity, not with judgment, but with recognition." He turned slowly toward Ethan. "Thank you, Judge Monroe, for reminding me who I was." After the press conference, the story exploded across the country. News outlets ran the headline, "Veteran denied benefits. Forgotten hero finally seen." Social media flooded with a powerful side-by-side image, Raymond carrying a young Afghan child in a 2003 war photo, and Raymond in court decades later. The contrast hit like a mirror to the nation's conscience. Pushpin the very next day, the Department of Veterans Affairs called an emergency meeting. Raymond's case was no longer just his. It became the voice of thousands of forgotten veterans' lost checks, outdated addresses, broken systems. Small Blue Diamond. Within 1 week, a donation campaign launched under Raymond Cole's name. In just 48 hours, over $210,000 was raised. Some of the messages that came with the donations read, "My dad was a silent hero too. Thank you. My uncle went missing. This story felt like mine. This country owes people like you. Your silence now echoes." Small Blue Diamond But the most unexpected visit came one quiet morning. Raymond was sipping coffee in his temporary hotel room when a knock came at the door. He opened it, and there stood Mr. Alvarez, the store owner who had once called the cops over a loaf of bread. He wore a suit. His face was tense, unsure. His hands kept fidgeting in his pockets. "Mr. Cole, I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I thought you were just someone looking for trouble. But you're someone who saves lives." Not seeing that was my greatest blindness. Raymond lowered his head. "I was just hungry. And I was just angry," Alvarez said. "And when hunger and anger meet, justice goes the wrong way. I'm thankful to you not because the charges were dropped, but because you reminded me how to be human." Raymond didn't look away. He shook Alvarez's hand firmly, sincerely. Small Blue Diamond later that same day, there was more news. Emily arrived with a small stack of papers. "I found a place for you, Ray," she said. "It's called Veterans Village. It's quiet, dignified, supportive. If you're willing, it'd be your own space, your own apartment." Raymond stayed quiet at first. After so many years between alleys and sidewalks, the idea of turning a key to his own door felt strange, like rebelling against the loneliness he'd grown used to. But then he looked up. He smiled. "That's the first offer that's ever felt like home. I accept." Small Blue Diamond. The final scene came that evening. Raymond was invited to Judge Monroe's home. Around the table sat Ethan's wife, his kids, even an old military buddy. Raymond was a little nervous. During dinner, one of the kids asked, "Mr. Cole, after all that time on the street, are you angry?" Raymond put down his fork. The room went quiet. "No," he said calmly. "I'm not angry. I'm hurt. But being hurt means I'm still human. I never hurt anyone. I just quietly carried pain." He looked the child in the eyes. "But I don't want to stay silent anymore. Because silence lets mistakes settle in and stay." On his third day at Veterans Village, Raymond Cole stood by the window. He was in a small, simple apartment, but it was his. A coffee maker, an old radio, and a photo from his wedding day with Margaret. The same faded picture he had carried in his pocket for years was finally in a frame, on a shelf. The room was quiet. But this time, it wasn't the kind of quiet that comes from loneliness. It was the silence of belonging, the echo of peace, not anxiety. At the end of the hallway, a washing machine hummed. His neighbor Frank, a former Navy man, had just returned from his morning walk. He left his door open and called out, "Morning, Cole." Raymond froze for a second. Someone had used his name, not just hey. Small Blue Diamond, a new routine. Speaking at schools. When the folks from Veterans Affairs asked Raymond to visit a few schools and talk to troubled teens, he hesitated. "I'm not a teacher," he said. But Emily gently pushed him. "You're not a lesson, Ray. You are the lesson. The kind they don't put in textbooks." During his first school visit, one quiet kid in a hoodie sitting in the back caught his eye. While others scrolled on their phones, that boy never looked away. Raymond spoke. "I was called a hero in a war. But the longest battle I ever fought was inside me. When my wife died, it wasn't me the system failed, it was her. So I walked away from the system. Spent years on the sidewalk. People stepped over me. But I kept breathing. You know why? Because hope lives in silence. And some days, just breathing is a victory." Afterward, the quiet kid came up to him. "Mr. Cole, I have a photo too. But I hide it. It's with my dad. And it hurts to look at now." Raymond nodded. Photos can hurt. But healing usually starts right there. The boy smiled. "Tomorrow, I'm bringing that photo to school." Small Blue Diamond echoes in Washington. Raymond's story had reached all the way to Capitol Hill. During a Senate hearing, one representative pulled out 2 photographs. One Raymond carrying a child through smoke in 2003. The other Raymond sitting among trash bags in Brooklyn years later. "We have to ask ourselves about our priorities," the senator said. "This is the same man. In one photo, our pride. In the other, our failure." A bill was introduced called the Raymond Cole Act. It called for a full review of terminated veteran benefits, compensation audits, and a legal aid program for homeless vets. It passed unanimously. Small Blue Diamond. The most unexpected moment one day. As Raymond read quietly in the common room at Veterans Village, Emily walked in holding a letter. "This is for you," she said. He opened the envelope. Inside was a colorful sheet of paper written in a child's hand. "Dear Mr. Cole, I'm 10 years old. I used to see you behind the grocery store collecting bottles. I always asked my mom, why doesn't anyone help that man? Now I know you're a hero. We read your story in class. I'm not scared when I see you anymore. Because now I know. Some people wear memories, not clothes. Jason Miller, 5th grade. Raymond read it over and over. Pressed the paper to his chest. His eyes filled with tears. It meant more than any medal he'd ever earned. Small Blue Diamond, the final frame. One afternoon, Ethan Monroe came by with his wife and kids. They sat in the quiet garden behind Veterans Village around a plain wooden table under soft sunlight. Ethan's 13-year-old son, Alex, looked at Raymond and asked, "Mr. Cole, the system turned its back on you for years. Aren't you angry?" Raymond was quiet. He looked out toward the playground. "People don't get hurt by systems," he said. "They get hurt by other people. But people can change." He turned back to Alex. "I had a judge who believed in me, a niece who hugged me back to life, and a kid who wrote me a letter. Because of them, anger turned into gratitude. And that's the only thing I've ever seen strong enough to beat rage, to be remembered." 6 months had passed. The walls of Raymond Cole's little apartment at Veterans Village weren't just covered with photos anymore, they were filled with remembrance. There was Margaret's youthful smile, a dusty old team photo from Iraq, and a framed picture from a ceremony he'd attended with Judge Ethan Monroe. But the real wall was his heart, and now it was no longer hollow. Small Blue Diamond. One morning, a ceremony, the annual Veterans Honor Ceremony at Fort Hamilton, was different this year. Every invitation highlighted one name: Staff Sergeant Raymond Cole, the silent hero. Raymond stepped up to the podium wearing his uniform. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Distinguished Service Medal lined up proudly on his chest. But what stood out most was what hung around his neck: Margaret's old wedding ring, strung on a simple chain. He kept his speech short. "I fought for this country, but when the war ended, I forgot who I was. The system forgot me, but people remembered. And that is the greatest victory of all, to be seen again." His voice cracked. "There was a time I said, I just need the strength to survive one more day. Today, you gave me that strength." There was no applause. There was a standing ovation. Everyone, from young cadets to gray-haired veterans, rose to their feet in honor. Small Blue Diamond. The Cole Initiative. The following week, the legal process was complete. The Cole Initiative was officially launched, the Raymond Cole Veterans Support Fund. It offered free legal aid for homeless veterans, full audits of missing benefits, mental health, and reintegration support programs. At the opening ceremony, Ethan Monroe spoke not as a judge, but as a friend. "Raymond is just one man, yes, but his story speaks for thousands. And we shouldn't just hear the stories of the silent ones, we should feel them." Small Blue Diamond. A bench in Prospect Park. Years ago, Raymond had slept on a cold bench there. Now, that same bench carried new meaning. A bronze plaque was installed, and it read, "Here slept a man. He never asked for anything. He only wanted to be remembered. Staff Sergeant Raymond Cole, 1957, for those who stand quietly in the storm." Local school children attended the dedication. Among them, 10-year-old Jason Miller, the boy who wrote that now-famous letter. He stepped up to the mic and read, "Not everyone in torn clothes is bad. Some people wear memories instead." Raymond stood nearby, a single tear in his eye, cap on his head, cane in his hand, but standing tall, because now he wasn't a shadow, he was a legacy. Small Blue Diamond. In the final scene, saying goodbye to Margaret that day, in the small garden of Veterans Village, Raymond sat alone, Margaret's photo in his hand. "Hi, Maggie. I came late, but I made it. Maybe I didn't keep all the promises I made to you in time, but now people know you. Not just my name, yours." He pulled out a new photo. Emily, Ethan, Jason, young soldiers, school kids. All around him. "My new family. I think you'd be proud." He placed the photo beside Margaret's frame, then whispered, "My identity isn't just a dog tag anymore. There are people now, Maggie. People who really know who I am." Small Blue Diamond. A closing but not an ending. Every year on November 11th, Veterans Village hosts a small ceremony in honor of Raymond Cole. Stories are shared. Poems are read. Letters from young people are pinned to a wall. Raymond doesn't take the stage. He sits quietly in the back row, but the light in his eyes speaks louder than any speech. And 1 year later, when Jason grew up and put on his first ROTC uniform, the first person he called was Raymond Cole. "I want to be like you," he said. Raymond smiled, then replied, "Don't be like me. Be better. Justice may be late, but when it comes, it changes more than paperwork. It changes lives. And I'm living proof of that. If this story touched your heart, leave a like and subscribe to our channel to remember the silent heroes. Because sometimes, one click can echo through an entire life.